Chapter 60-65. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lu Hongwei's gaze changed slightly, and there was a trace of appreciation and admiration. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang was destined to be the holy maiden of light. Many people did not have this kind of breadth of mind. After returning to the house, Song Zhuqing couldn't wait to try it. After so long, this was the first antidote he had obtained. The moment he opened his mouth, he hesitated for a moment, but thinking of Bailey Hongzhuang's confident smile, he swallowed the potion without hesitation. Song Langtian had been accompanying Song Zhuqing, and after seeing him drink the potion, he anxiously paid attention to his changes. Song Zhuqing didn't feel any change after drinking the potion, but this situation didn't last long. Suddenly, his whole body seemed to be on fire, and a terrible burning sensation burst out in his body. In just a short moment, Song Zhuqing's face turned as red as a cooked shrimp, showing an extremely painful appearance. "Zhuqing, what's the matter with you?" The sudden scene was beyond Song Langtian's expectations. Even the president, who was usually calm and collected, was flustered at this moment. "Zhuqing, what's the matter with you?" "I'm going to find the holy maiden." Song Langtian stood up and was about to find Bailey Hongzhuang when he suddenly heard a "Watts" sound. He quickly turned around and saw Song Zhuqing spitting out a mouthful of black blood. The black blood was almost solidified. Unlike the bright red blood, this black blood looked like a poisonous substance, filthy and disgusting. "This is poisonous blood?" Song Langtian looked at the black blood and immediately understood in his heart. They had always known that there was still residual poison in Song Zhuqing's body, but they couldn't completely remove the poison after thinking of many ways. However, now that Song Zhuqing suddenly vomited, even if he was not a doctor, he understood that this was a good thing. Song Zhuqing leaned limply on the chair, his face pale, and there was still bright red blood hanging from the corners of his lips. Although he was extremely weak, his eyes were blooming with an unprecedented bright brilliance. "Father, the poison seems to be really detoxified." Ever since he was poisoned, he had always felt an indescribable pressure lingering in his heart. His entire being was extremely stifled, and even his breathing seemed to be shrouded by the pressure. But now, he felt that his breathing had become very relaxed, which was completely different from the usual situation. "Why don't you try circulating your essence energy?" Song Langtian looked at Song Zhuqing in surprise, and his breathing quickened. The surprise came too suddenly and he couldn't believe it. He was only worried that it was fake. That was the real feeling of falling from heaven to hell. Song Zhuqing nodded and carefully circulated her essence energy. When he realized that the trace of origin energy had merged with his dantian, which had been stagnant for a long time, finally gained a trace of strength, he couldn't help but want to cheer. All right. The poison is really gone." Song Zhuqing looked at Song Langtian excitedly, her eyes full of tears. Even if he was a man, he could no longer suppress his emotions at this time. He had waited too long for this day. He had originally thought that his life was over, but now he had actually succeeded. Hearing Song Zhuqing's words, Song Langtian was completely relieved. He couldn't help but burst into tears. God was not too cruel to them. His son had come back to life. Chapter 60-66. After detoxifying the poison, Song Zhuqing didn't care about his weak body. He just wanted to thank Bailey Hongzhuang properly. Detoxifying the poison was equivalent to giving him a second chance at life. He could finally cultivate again. As the son of the president, it was the most painful thing for him to become a useless person who couldn't improve his strength. More than once, he felt that he was simply a disgrace to his father. However, in the face of his father's concern and his family's expectations, the pain in his heart was simply indescribable. Especially when he saw his family's disappointment over and over again but still covered up and comforted him, his heart was bleeding. This time they really came to the right place. He finally didn't have to see his family sad for him. Even if he started cultivating again now and his strength had fallen a lot, he didn't care because as long as he could still cultivate, this was already the happiest thing. When Song Zhuqing and Song Langtian returned, they heard the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Hongwei. Only then did they understand why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to detoxify the poison that so many people couldn't detoxify. It turned out that the medicinal herbs used to make the potion were so precious. Medicinal herbs that the upper realm didn't have. Just this point alone, as long as these medicinal herbs were taken to the auction house, they would definitely be sold at a sky-high price. However, Bailey Hongzhuang actually used these medicinal herbs to help him concoct the antidote and even wasted so much. Song Langtian and Song Zhuqing couldn't help but look at each other. They owed her a big favor. They had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had not slept or rested for 7 days to find a way to detoxify the poison. They were already very apologetic, but they had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had paid far more than them. It was just the first time they met and they didn't even ask for any compensation. Bailey Hongzhuang had paid so much, which really made them feel ashamed. Holy Maiden. Song Zhuqing slowly walked into the room and looked at the graceful figure with a deep and complicated gaze. The next moment he bowed deeply, "Thank you, Holy Maiden, for saving my life." Looking at Song Zhuqing's actions, Lu Hongwei knew that the medicine concocted by Bailey Hongzhuang was really effective. He was even more amazed. "Young Master Song, there's no need to be so polite." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "This poison doesn't actually affect your life, so there's no need to thank me for saving your life." Speaking of which, even she felt that this poison was very unique. It would only suppress the cultivator's cultivation and prevent them from cultivating, but it would not affect their life. If the poisoned person was just an ordinary person, there would be no effect at all. However, Song Zhuqing shook his head. His fair and handsome face was filled with seriousness as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a deep sense of gratitude. "Ever since I was poisoned, I've been like a walking corpse for the past few years. Although I'm not dead, I don't feel like I'm truly alive. Only now have I truly come back to life, so this is a life-saving grace to me." Song Zhuqing's gaze was solemn. "Miss Bailey, I will always remember this kindness in my heart. No matter what happens in the future, as long as you need my help, I will never refuse." Looking at Song Zhuqing's serious look, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that this man, who was not much older than her, was an honest and upright person. She didn't say much because this kind of person wouldn't change his mind easily once he had decided on something. What's more, she had something to ask the Metal Guild for help. Chapter 60-67. Her original intention of saving Song Zhuqing was not simple, and a larger part of the reason was because of Song Longtian's identity. In fact, she also understood that after the news of the Dark Sacred Assembly spread out, there would definitely be a lot of opposition. Even if Song Langtian was the president of the Metal Guild, he couldn't completely stop it. However, she believed that the identity of the president still had a certain effect. As long as they could reduce the resistance a little, it would be a success for them. "Holy Maiden, thank you so much." Song Longtian's face was full of smiles. Although there had been a lot of smiles on his face in the past few days, it was only this time that it really came from the bottom of his heart. Without the layer of worry that had been lingering in his heart, he felt relaxed all over. "It's nothing," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Under the invitation of Song Langtian and Song Zhuqing, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Hongwei followed the two to the restaurant for dinner. She understood that if she didn't agree, Song Langtian and Bailey Hongzhuang would feel apologetic. "Young master, Madam has been in there for 7 days and there is no news until now. Shall we go in and take a look?" Huang Futing looked at Di Beichen, who was still maintaining that posture and looking at the Holy Assembly, with extreme admiration in his heart. After waiting for so many days in a row, he couldn't hold back anymore. There was no movement for such a long time. If Madam was in danger, wouldn't it be troublesome? Even if the young master was just sitting there calmly and indifferently, with an elegant temperament that seemed otherworldly, he knew that the young master must be more anxious than him. What he admired the most was the young master's temperament. After enduring for so long, he didn't rush out directly to take a look. "No hurry," Di Beichen said slowly. "She should be delayed by other things." "Young master, how did you know?" Huang Futing frowned. They had been staying in the restaurant since they came here, and there was no news from the Holy Assembly at all. This situation was impossible to judge at all. "Based on my understanding of her." Di Beichen's lips curved slightly. Hongzhuang never did anything unprepared. This time he insisted on coming because he wanted to set his mind at ease, but he knew that since Hongzhuang dared to come here by herself, it proved that she was confident. There was no movement for so long, something else must have happened. Upon hearing Di Beichen's words, Huang Futing was also slightly stunned. He had always felt that the young master and madam were a pair with great tacit understanding. Perhaps he was really too anxious? While they were waiting, 4 figures suddenly appeared in front of the radiant sacred assembly. "Young master, it's madam," Huang Futing said excitedly. Di Beichen turned his eyes and looked at the elegant white figure below. His eyes were not as calm as usual, but had a trace of gentleness. "Madam is indeed fine." Huang Futing heaved a sigh of relief. Although he didn't understand what had happened in the past 7 days, since his wife could still talk and laugh, it proved that there really was no problem. "But why is Madam with President Song?" "President Song?" Di Beichen raised an eyebrow. Huang Futing nodded slightly. The one beside President Liu is President Song. He is the president of the Metal Attribute Guild. I met him once a few years ago. The young man beside him is his son, Song Zhuqing. I heard that he was once poisoned, causing his cultivation to be unable to progress. I didn't expect to see him here. Chapter 60-68. So that's how it is? Huang Futing was a little puzzled. Just now, he clearly felt that the atmosphere was inexplicably low, but after he finished his introduction, it suddenly became relaxed again. What exactly did I say to change the atmosphere? Madam should have been treating Song Zhuqing's illness these days, so there has been no news, Di Beichen said slowly. Although he had always firmly believed that the lack of news these days was not because something had happened to Hong Zhuang, he was also a little puzzled. What was the reason for Hong Zhuang's delay for so many days? When he found out that Song Zhuqing was poisoned, he connected the dots and guessed the whole story from beginning to end. He had seen the process of Hong Zhuang developing the antidote. Once she started researching, everything around her seemed to be automatically blocked by her. It seemed that she had been studying how to detoxify the poison for the past 7 days. As for coming out together now, it must be that the detoxification was successful. Even though he had just taken a casual glance, he was keenly aware that President Song and Song Zhuqing were extremely polite to Hong Zhuang. Even if Hong Zhuang was the holy maiden of the light world, her attitude was a little too warm. However, after connecting all the dots, everything made sense. Huang Futing finally understood. So that's the case, no wonder I felt that President Song was particularly warm when I looked at him just now. Young master, do you think Madam is doing this for us? Di Beichen's eyes gradually deepened, but he just looked at the figure outside the window without speaking. Bailey Hongzhuang had lunch under the warm hospitality of President Song and Song Zhuqing. The other party wanted to invite her to the Metal Attribute Guild as a guest, but they gave up after she repeatedly declined. Hong Zhuang has been with me for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen President Song so warm. If others saw it, I'm afraid they wouldn't believe it. Lu Hongwei was full of smiles. He and Song Langtian had known each other for a long time. This guy was usually upright and plain-spoken, and even his son followed his temperament. Usually, even if others tried to curry favor with him, he wouldn't pay much attention. As for treating others so warmly, that was unprecedented. President Song is a very good person, and he loves his son very much. After she cured Song Zhuqing, he could feel that President Song was more excited than Song Zhuqing. This was the difficulty of being a parent. Lu Hongwei nodded slightly, then said, "Why did you come to the sacred assembly this time? Based on my understanding of you, if there's nothing, you probably wouldn't take the initiative to come to the assembly." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little embarrassed. Thinking about it carefully, she really hadn't taken it back for a long time. "I came to the sacred of the sacred assembly. I have something to discuss with President Song." "Oh?" Lu Hongwei raised his eyebrows. "There's no harm." Bailey Hongzhuang looked around and then said, "President, let's wait until we're in the house." This was no small matter and there were many people around, so he naturally wouldn't let the matter be exposed. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's grave expression, Lu Hongwei nodded, and his expression became a little more serious. Chapter 60-69. President, what do you think of the dark attribute cultivators? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Lu Hongwei tentatively. She didn't go straight to the point. If Lu Hongwei's attitude was extremely firm, then she didn't have to say too much. Such a strange question was undoubtedly beyond Lu Hongwei's expectations. He frowned slightly and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with some doubts. Dark attribute cultivators? Why are you suddenly asking me this question? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. I feel that the upper realm cultivators seem to reject the dark attribute, so I wanted to ask for your opinion, President. Lu Hongwei pondered for a moment. How could he not know that Bailey Hongzhuang must have other motives for asking this question? It was just that before he agreed, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't say the real reason. Actually, I know about the situation between you and young Master D. Not only is young Master D a dark attribute cultivator, but he's also a very outstanding one. Lu Hongwei paused, then continued, actually, when you were chosen as the Holy Maiden of Light, everyone was quite controversial. The main reason was your union with young Master D. Although you haven't been in the upper realm for long, I believe you have some understanding of the war hundreds of years ago. This kind of thing is a problem left behind by the era, but now no one will talk about the attribute problem between you and young Master D. You don't have to worry. Thinking back to when Bailey Hongzhuang became the Holy Maiden of Light, If it wasn't because the Holy Maiden of Light hadn't appeared for too long and the Holy Maiden Crystal had recognized Bailey Hongzhuang, there would inevitably be twists and turns. However, everyone was too expectant of the Saintess of the Holy Light. Hence they turned a blind eye to this matter. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This matter really didn't make it too difficult for her at that time. She also knew in her heart that the president must have helped her to solve it. President, what I actually want to know more is whether you reject the dark attribute cultivators? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and said seriously, actually, the attribute is not something that can be decided by the cultivator himself. Isn't it a little biased to defeat an entire boat of people just because of one attribute? Lu Hongwei frowned when he heard that. Hongzhuang, I feel like you're not happy with the current situation. Don't tell me, or perhaps Di Beichen is planning something? As the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, Lu Hongwei was not a fool. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had only said a few probing words, he had already guessed it. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't hide it anymore. Actually, from the moment she came here, she knew that she couldn't hide this news from the president. However, she believed in the president. President, I believe in your character and I'm very grateful for your care all this time. It was all thanks to your help that I was able to become the Saintess of the Light. I guess you already know why I'm here today. I'm here to ask for your opinion. If you don't agree, I'll resign from the position of the Saintess of the Light. I don't want to implicate the entire Radiant Sacred Assembly because of my personal actions. At the same time, I also hope that you can keep this a secret and don't spread it. Chapter 60-70. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lu Hongwei's pupils shrunk and his heart was filled with shock. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a complicated expression and remained silent for a long time, because these words brought him too much shock. He always knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had a very deep relationship, but he never thought that she would be willing to give up the position of Holy Maiden for Di Beichen. This was an important position in the eyes of others, but she could so calmly say that she would give it up. From her expression, there was not even the slightest bit of struggle, as if this position was not worth mentioning compared to Di Beichen. He did not know if it was because of this reason that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to surpass Xiao Shou to become the Holy Maiden. The two of them had completely different attitudes towards this position. However, other than this, he was even more surprised by Bailey Hongzhuang's trust in him. If such an important matter was leaked out, it would definitely cause a huge impact. As long as he opposed it, Bailey Hongzhuang might not be able to leave from today onwards. She clearly knew that coming here would be risky, but she still insisted on coming, in order not to affect the Holy Assembly, and also to give him an explanation. In fact, thinking about it carefully, he had not done anything for Bailey Hongzhuang. He had always been protecting the Holy Maiden. When the Xiao family and the Jun family made a move against Bailey Hongzhuang, they had ignored the title of the Holy Maiden and trampled on the dignity of the Holy Assembly. This young girl in front of him had remembered everything in her heart, and was full of respect and gratitude towards the Holy Assembly. Under such circumstances, even if he opposed this matter, he could not be extremely agitated. In the face of such an honest and sincere child, all means and schemes seemed too dirty. Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry, and only quietly waited for Lu Hongwei's answer. She knew that her words would definitely cause a shock. At this moment, Lu Hongwei's feelings must be extremely complicated, and he needed time to think it over. However, she believed that she had not misjudged him. After a long while, Lu Hongwei, who had been silent all this time, slowly said, "Hongzhuang, you are really bold." Noticing that Lu Hongwei did not turn hostile, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly sighed in relief. At least this meant that the situation did not develop in the worst direction. You should be very clear about the discrimination and exclusion towards the dark attribute. Young Master Di himself is an exception. Not only is he the young master of the Di family, but he is also an extremely powerful dark attribute practitioner. There are many reasons why he has reached this step, and one of them is because you are the Holy Maiden. Lu Hongwei's face was serious. Di Beichen's success was almost impossible to replicate because he had too many factors. In addition to his own strength, the Di family and Bailey Hongzhuang were also his helpers. Thinking back to when everyone knew that Di Beichen had the dark attribute, their feelings were actually very complicated. He believed that the Di family also had some complaints, but they were suppressed by the Di family. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I understand the president's meaning. It is because Beichen has the dark attribute, and also because he understands the situation of dark attribute practitioners, that he wants to change everything. Chapter 60-71. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's serious expression, Lu Hongwei sighed faintly. Hong Zhuang, there's no such thing as fairness in this world to begin with. Some people are arrogant and despotic, doing all kinds of bad things, but they live a very glorious life, while some people have a stable life but inexplicably lose their lives. Many times we see a lot of injustice, but we can't do anything about it. In this world, the weak are prey to the strong and the strong are respected. You said that everyone has blocked the path of dark cultivators, that's right, but have you ever thought that Di Beichen still managed to stand up? As long as he's strong enough and has a respectable status, even if he's a dark cultivator, he's still in existence that everyone respects. Lu Hongwei's gaze was distant, and his expression was complicated. What happened back then was a huge blow to them, but it was also a form of training. The power of dark cultivators is really terrifying, and their methods of controlling corpses are even more terrifying. You don't know what happened back then, and you don't understand what kind of catastrophe they went through back then. Actually, everyone knows that this kind of behavior is cruel to them, but once they're allowed to develop, it'll be even more cruel to us. Listening to these words, the look on Bailey Hong Zhuang's face became complicated. Perhaps they had different ideas from those in power. What they saw was how difficult the lives of dark cultivators were, but what Lu Hongwei and the others saw was the destructive power of dark cultivators on the entire upper realm. Therefore, they would rather let these people suffer than let more people bear the risk. Actually, it couldn't be said that anyone's thoughts were wrong, it was just that their standpoints were different. Her thoughts were shaken for a moment, but she quickly stabilized them again. Because, in this world there could be strong people appearing at any time. Even if dark cultivators were very strong, it didn't mean that they wanted to control or destroy the entire world. President, I think that if everyone treated the darkness attribute cultivators with a normal attitude, the incident back then might not have happened. Her bright phoenix eyes were clear and serious. If a cultivator with peerless talent and astonishing ambition appeared in another guild, he would also be able to do all of this. Actually, I don't think worry is a reason. Although dark cultivators are very powerful, the number of awakened dark cultivators is very small. In fact, after so many years of suppression, their living space had become smaller and smaller, and their strength was generally lower. Why can't we give them a chance to survive? They had already considered this problem long before they decided to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly with Di Beichen. No matter which faction it was, there would definitely be some people with dark hearts. It was not only the dark attribute. Since the dark attribute already existed in this world, why couldn't everyone treat it normally? Just as He Shinjun thought, he only hoped that everyone could face the darkness attribute and not look down on it. Lu Hongwei's expression was solemn. He actually wanted to persuade Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a move was too dangerous. It wasn't easy for the Holy Light Assembly to find the Holy Maiden of Light, and no matter how they looked at it, Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was very satisfactory. Chapter 6072. It would be best if he could convince Bailey Hongzhuang to give up on this plan. However, based on the current situation, he was afraid that he would not be able to convince Bailey Hongzhuang at all. Even he could not refute some of the latter's words. If this matter was imperative, and if Bailey Hongzhuang continued to hold the title of Saint of the Light, things would become very complicated. As the president, he knew too well that the Light Sacred Assembly was the most resistant to the dark attribute among all the guilds. This was because the dark attribute was the opposite of the Light Sacred Assembly. Hongzhuang, I understand what you're thinking, but what you're doing is going against the law of the world. Even if you have the protection of the Di family and the Lin family, you still can't withstand such pressure. Do you really want to do this? This won't do you any good at all. Lu Hongwei could not understand. This was indeed a good way to save the dark attribute cultivators from the fire and water. However, with Di Beichen's situation, it was not worth it at all. We're all very clear about this. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. Her deep eyes were shining with a dazzling light, but as long as we live in this world, there are many things that must be done, even if it's a big risk, even if it's a failure. President, I expected that you wouldn't agree. As long as you don't publicize this matter in advance, I'm already very grateful. A faint smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's fair and delicate face. She roughly understood Lu Hongwei's thoughts, but she was still very grateful. Because Lu Hongwei was willing to tell her so much, it proved that he treated her sincerely. If he did not care about her at all, he would not have to go through so much trouble to say that Jishi was evil. He might even have taken action. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's unwavering expression, Lu Hongwei sighed. He had seen many outstanding juniors, and Bailey Hongzhuang was without a doubt the most outstanding of them all. In fact, he also understood that some people would often do things that ordinary people could not understand. They were paranoid and crazy, but it was these kinds of people who could very likely achieve things that would shock you. No matter if it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Di Beichen, the risk was too great. Even if someone had thought about it before, no one dared to do it. However, these two young people had actually put such a crazy move into action. If he really succeeded, it would definitely be a huge undertaking. Do you already have a comprehensive plan? It won't be easy to accomplish all of this. Even if it does succeed, the darkness attribute inheritance has disappeared for many years. It will be very difficult to become stronger. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to leave, Lu Hongwei spoke again. The reason why the various large guilds have been able to maintain their current state is because everyone's strength is evenly matched. If the Dark Sacred Assembly is established, but the members aren't strong enough, then it will be useless. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Don't worry, President. That won't be a problem. Lu Hongwei was slightly stunned. He could not help but think of Di Beichen. Immediately he understood. So, that's how it is. He actually has such luck. Di Beichen had been watching the Light Sacred Assembly from the restaurant all this time. During the previous 7 days, Hongzhuang had not cut to the chase. After returning, Hongzhuang would definitely discuss this matter with guild leader Lu. Hence, now was the most crucial moment. Chapter 6073. Huang Futing naturally understood that this was the most critical moment, so he kept a close eye on the Holy Light Assembly. The madam had taken such a huge risk for the sake of the Dark Sacred Assembly. No matter what, they must not let anything happen to the madam. Time passed by minute, but it was extremely unbearable for them. This was because they did not know what kind of decision President Lu would make. This was a gamble to begin with. After a long time, when the white figure appeared in front of the door of the Holy Assembly, Di Beichen's body that had been tense all this time relaxed. Huang Futing was just about to speak when he realized that his young master had disappeared. He hurriedly approached the window and realized that his young master had directly jumped down and appeared next to the madam. He immediately smiled and shook his head. His young master had always placed the madam at the top of his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked out of the Holy Light Assembly. She thought that Beichen must be worried after being delayed here for so many days. She could not continue to stay here. She had to hurry back. Just as she was deep in thought, a white figure descended from the sky and appeared next to her in the blink of an eye. There was a moment of surprise on her beautiful and refined little face. After sensing the familiar and reassuring aura, a bright and beautiful smile bloomed on her peerless face. Many people on the street had noticed this scene. The young lady in white and the young man in white were standing together. The scene was pleasing to the eye and magnificent. When the crowd recognized the two of them, the amazement in their hearts deepened. Isn't that the Holy Maiden and young Master Di? That's right, it's them. The rumors are true. The relationship between the two of them is really enviable. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's reputation grew, their relationship became a much-told story. Many young men and women hoped that they could have such an unswerving love. Beichen, what are you doing here? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled as she looked at the stunningly handsome face. Even the sunlight was not as dazzling as him. Di Beichen held her little hand. I missed you. These 3 simple words touched Bailey Hongzhuang's heart inexplicably. How could she not know that Di Beichen was the one she was most worried about when she left? I haven't been back for so long, Beichen must be worried, so he came over. Don't worry. I'm fine. Bailey Hongzhuang opened her hand and interlocked her fingers with Di Beichen's. She felt at ease when she was with him. When she was alone, she had always been fearless. Only when she was with Beichen could she not think about anything and truly relax. Let's go home. Di Beichen didn't ask anything. He just gently held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and left the Holy Assembly. Go home. It was a very heartwarming word. Although nothing dangerous had happened in the past few days, she had to admit that she was really tired. She hadn't rested for 7 days. In addition, she was careful just now. Now that she was relaxed, she felt that her breathing had become smooth. After seeing the scene downstairs, Huang Futing didn't jump down immediately. Madam hadn't had it easy these days. He didn't want to be an eyesore. Therefore he slowly walked down from upstairs. When he appeared in front of Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, the timing was just right. Let's go. We're going back. Di Beichen said. Chapter 6074. Huang Futing's face was full of smiles. Isn't that so? Young master is worried about Madam's safety. Since you entered the Holy Light Assembly, we have been guarding here. Fortunately, Madam has finally come out today. Otherwise, I'm worried that young master would directly kill his way in. He finally understood that young master could be indifferent to everything, but when it came to Madam, he really took it to heart. Since the day I entered? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned and looked at Di Beichen with some surprise. She thought that Beichen came because she had been delayed here for a few days, but now it seemed that Beichen had been here since the day she set off. In that case, she had said so much to Beichen before, but Beichen did not change his mind at all. Under Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Di Beichen pretended not to hear and said to himself, "We've been out for a few days. It's time for us to go back." Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but laugh, but her heart felt exceptionally warm. She had always understood that Beichen cared about her very much. From the first time they met until now, as long as it was about her, Beichen had never neglected it. When searching for her origins, Beichen was more worried than her. When she came to the upper realm, Beichen was worried that she would be bullied. In fact, many times she understood that Beichen was not a person who would say everything, but it could be seen from the things he did. Just as she did not have to worry about the elders not liking her after she went to the Di family, she did not have to worry about her status after knowing about Xiao Sou's marriage. This was because she had enough trust in Beichen. Huang Futing also smiled faintly and did not say anything. Usually, when he was dealing with other matters, he did not see young master like this. Come to think of it, he would only act like this in front of Madam. Along the way, Di Beichen didn't take the initiative to mention President Lu's reaction. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that Hong Zhuang didn't want to affect the Holy Assembly, they wouldn't have to come here at all. President Lu's position was completely different from theirs, so the possibility of him agreeing was close to zero. Bailey Hongzhuang also walked quietly, her mind still thinking about the conversation she had in the house. After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang took the initiative to say, "I've already talked to Chairman Lu." "Okay," Di Beichen replied. "Aren't you curious about the answer?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Di Beichen. Her bright eyes were filled with curiosity. Di Beichen raised their interlocked hands and chuckled, "I can roughly guess. At least President Lu is a good person. Otherwise it wouldn't be you who walked out, but me who went in and snatched you out." Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle and nodded, "You're right. President Lu is actually very good." After knowing my decision, although he was shocked, he didn't get angry because of it. For this reason, he specially reminded me of the risks I would have to face. He wanted to persuade me, but after seeing that I was unmoved, he didn't say anything more. "Madam, what is President Lu's attitude?" Wang Futing frowned. It seemed that after talking for a long time, there was still no result. "He neither supports nor opposes it," Di Beichen said. Chapter 6075. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Huang Futing could not help but sigh. However, he also understood that with President Lu's status, it was already good enough that he did not directly object. According to his understanding of the Holy Assembly, ordinary people would not accept this at all. Di Beichen was not worried. In fact, he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang did this for his own peace of mind and also to give an explanation to the Holy Assembly. From the beginning to the end, she did not have any hope. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. In fact, President Lu's attitude was already a pleasant surprise for her. This was because Chairman Lu didn't refute it directly. On the contrary, Chairman Lu was well aware of the difficult situation that dark attribute cultivators had been in all these years. Even he had to admit that this situation was unfair to dark attribute cultivators. She clearly felt that President Lu was a little touched when she mentioned this point. She was very glad that they were not the only ones who thought of all this. Since President Lu had thought of this point, there must be others who had thought of it too. Even if the vast majority of people were still very resistant to the darkness attribute, she was very clear about this world. When some influential people agreed, the voices of opposition would quickly decrease. This was because the right to speak had always been in the hands of a small number of people. As long as the identity of darkness attribute cultivators was confirmed, even if it would take a long time for everyone to eliminate the views of rejection, it was not a big deal. The problem of time would eventually be solved with time. Di Beichen, I think the situation may not be as bad as we think. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice sounded, and a faint smile appeared on her beautiful face. Hearing this, Di Beichen and Huang Futing could not help but look at her. After seeing the slightly relaxed smile on the latter's face, their mood inexplicably improved. During this period of time, because the dark sacred assembly was about to be established, no one said anything on the surface, but everyone was under a lot of pressure. The storm was coming. Under the seemingly calm surface, everyone could not help but worry. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was so healing that it made them forget their worries. Di Baichen looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "My wife's words are like gold." Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles, but her mind was thinking about President Lu's hesitant expression. She understood that what she had said had shaken President Lu. Perhaps what she had said now was useless, but she hoped that when that day came, President Lu would be willing to help. Because no one could guarantee that their descendants would not be of the darkness attribute. If all the things that they hated now happened to their own descendants, would they still have such hatred in their hearts? Zhao Jin walked alone on the empty road. He looked, his soulless and dispirited and haggard look. Overnight he was deserted. This feeling was a huge blow to anyone. However, facing his brother's departure, he could not say he was wrong. He constantly asked himself in his heart, but when he thought of Huang Futing, all his questions turned into annoyance and hatred. He hated Huang Futing. He felt that Huang Futing had ruined everything. If it were not for Huang Futing, he would not have ended up like this. Chapter 6076. That damned Huang Futing? Zhao Jin cursed. What do you mean I've changed? It's all just an excuse. His dark eyes were filled with anger. He was sure that these people were just using this excuse to leave him so that they could hug Huang Futing's thigh. They just couldn't find a reason to push all the blame onto him. He would be a fool if he really believed it. I have to pull myself together. I can't let Huang Futing see me as a joke. Zhao Jin's gaze gradually became firm. He had been muddle-headed for the past few days and couldn't figure it out. At this moment he finally figured it out. Why did he have to push all the blame onto him? It must be because everyone had changed their minds from the moment they saw the dark sacred assembly. He was the one who was the most rude to Di Baichen. The others didn't say anything. As long as he wasn't around, Di Baichen might accept others. He had been thinking for everyone for such a long time, but no one treated him as a brother. What dark sacred assembly? Di Baichen had already made up his mind to not accept him. What did the establishment of the dark sacred assembly have to do with him? The next moment, Zhao Jin suddenly changed his direction and walked towards the Piercing Wind City. Piercing Wind City Xiao family. Ever since the negotiation with Di Yujue was successful, Xiao Yanlong had stayed in the family and tried his best to nurture the young cultivators in the family. The most outstanding batch had already fallen in this trial. They only had a year's time. Although it was too short, they could only do their best. The Di family's land of inheritance was not simple. The three big families had opened it together, and after entering, it would definitely be a trial. If the family's disciples were too weak, they would just have to hand over the items. The Di family's strength was getting stronger and stronger, causing him to feel more and more tired. Who would have thought that Xiao Shou would be pregnant at this time? He had no choice. As the child's grandfather, he couldn't be so cruel. Xiao Shou had been staying in her house. To outsiders, she said that she was in seclusion, but in reality she was taking care of her baby. Junhong Cheng was also very concerned about his only grandson. From time to time he would send people to deliver some supplements. The child in Xiao Shou's belly was his greatest hope. On this day Xiao Yanlong heard an unbelievable piece of news, so he immediately found Junhong Cheng and brought him over. Looking at the skinny and dark-skinned man in front of them, the faces of the two patriarchs were filled with shock. Is what you said true? Di Baichen is establishing the Dark Sanctum? That's right. Even the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly has been built. It's near Emperor Cloud City, the man replied. How is this possible? Xiao Yanlong frowned, his eyes were filled with thoughts. This news was too sudden and too unbelievable. The Di family is in the limelight right now. As long as we continue to develop with this momentum, perhaps our family's status will rise again and become a transcendent aristocratic family. At this time, aren't they shooting themselves in the foot by doing such a thing? Junhong Cheng nodded slightly and said, I think this news is most likely false. Di Baichen wouldn't make such a crazy decision, and Di Yujue wouldn't agree. Establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly in the upper realm was something that only a madman would do. Obviously, in their eyes, Di Yujue and Di Baichen were not madmen. Chapter 6077. Zhao Jin had spent a tremendous amount of effort to meet the two family heads. With his status, meeting the family heads was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Now that he had finally managed to meet them, the two family heads did not believe him at all. He could not help but feel anxious. Seeing Zhao Jin's anxious look, Junhong Cheng slowly narrowed his eyes. His gaze was vigilant and cold. "You're of the darkness attribute as well. Establishing the dark sanctuary will only bring you benefits and no harm. You've suddenly come to tell us this at a time like this. Could it be that D. Bachin has come up with some new scheme to trick us?" After falling into the hands of the D family time and time again, they had become more careful in their dealings. This 1 year was a period of stability that they had obtained with great difficulty. Nothing was more important than the child in Xiao Sou's womb. However, they also understood that the D family must be very dissatisfied with this 1 year. If it had not been for the importance of the land of heritage, they would not have agreed to it. Now that this news had suddenly spread, perhaps the D family was deliberately baiting them so that they could take the opportunity to attack them again. Zhao Jian hurriedly waved his hand. "Family heads, I have a deep grudge with D. Bachin's subordinate, Huang Futing. To be honest, I didn't come to inform you of this news out of good intentions. I just didn't want to see Huang Futing getting too complacent. That's why I wanted to spread this news." The scene before him had clearly exceeded Zhao Jian's expectations. He had thought that the two family heads would be very happy after hearing this news and that he would be treated well here. He never thought that the two family heads would not believe him at all. They even thought that he was a spy. In fact, ever since Zhao Jian had awakened the darkness attribute, he had always been with people of the same attribute. He did not have enough experience in dealing with matters. Even if he had a good plan, it was not enough in front of the two old foxes. Junhong Cheng and Xiao Yanlong looked at each other. Both of them raised their eyebrows slightly. Clearly they would not believe Zhao Jian's words so easily. This person's sudden appearance was already very suspicious. Now that the news was so unreliable, they were almost certain that it was all fake. "Men, take him away." Xiao Yanlong furrowed his brows. He did not want to waste time on such a groundless matter. If word got out, wouldn't he become a joke? "Master Xiao, I'm telling the truth." Zhao Jian was completely dumbfounded. He never thought that this would be the outcome. However, Xiao Yanlong did not care about him at all. When he sent someone to take him away, he even gave the other person a look. Regardless of whether the news was true or not, this fellow could not be allowed to live. "Xiao family head, Jun family head, please let me go." Neither Xiao Yanlong nor Jun Hongqing took the initiative to speak. They just sat there quietly, countless thoughts swirling in their minds. Chapter 6078. I've also heard about this news. Xiao Yanlong nodded slightly. In fact, he had only heard a few words about this news. Even some of his family's disciples weren't sure about it. However, since Junhong Cheng had also heard about this, it proved that it wasn't groundless. Although this guy doesn't seem to be a good person, we can still go and inquire about this news. What do you think? Junhong Cheng raised his eyes and looked at Xiao Yanlong. His deep eyes were full of dignified expression. Currently, both their families were in a very difficult situation. The D family and the Lin family were eyeing them covetously. Once the secret land of inheritance opened, the D family would be greatly improved. At that time, the situation of their two families could be imagined. Therefore, as long as there was a glimmer of hope to completely overthrow the D family, they couldn't give up. If the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly was true, it would inevitably cause a devastating blow to D Bachin and even the D family. Xiao Yanlong frowned. This news is most likely false. Maybe D Bachin is waiting for us in the Emperor Cloud City. If we go, won't we fall into a trap? He still didn't believe that D Bachin would do such a bold thing. No matter who heard this news, they would think it was false. Just send 2 people to see if there is such a building or not. Don't worry too much. Junhong Cheng waved his hand. He only felt that after experiencing these things, Xiao Yanlong's mind was getting smaller and smaller. He was actually afraid of the D family to this extent. All right. The Xiao family had already established a transmission array near the Emperor Cloud City, so it was very fast to send people to inquire about it. When the two heard that there was really a black building near the Emperor Cloud City, their expressions changed and their eyes flashed with a thick shock. It's really there? Xiao Yanlong couldn't help but raise his voice. His eyes widened, revealing the shock in his heart. Reporting to Lord, we have indeed discovered a black building not far from here. This building is extremely grand and majestic, and it is completely black. It does indeed look like the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly. We guarded the area for a while and saw cultivators going in and out. However, we were afraid of being discovered, so we didn't dare to test them. So we didn't know what kind of attribute they had. I got it. You can leave now. Yes. After his subordinate left, Xiao Yanlong looked at Jun Hongcheng. Because this matter had always been of concern to them, Jun Hongcheng had also stayed in the Xiao family these few days to wait for news. Since this black building really exists, could it be that what Zhao Jian said was true? If I had known earlier, I would have kept him alive. Jun Hongcheng's eyes darkened. It's fine if he's dead, but this person's motives aren't pure. If he's a spy, it'll be a disaster. Let's consider this matter carefully. Xiao Yanlong nodded. If this is true, then Di Beichen is really courting death. Perhaps he's been in the limelight too much recently, so he thinks that he can succeed in everything he does. It's human nature to be arrogant. Di Beichen's journey has been too smooth. Jun Hongqing narrowed his eyes. Regarding Di Beichen's rise, his mood was very complicated. He couldn't understand why it was like this. Ling Sun had always been very outstanding in his heart, but when he was with Di Beichen he was always suppressed. Chapter 60-79. If that's the case, then Di Beichen is really courting death. Xiao Yanlong's lips curved into a cold smile. I wonder if Di Yujue knows about this? This matter happened near Diyun City. It's hard to say if Di Yujue knows about it. Jun Hongqing frowned. He really couldn't judge whether this matter was done by Di Beichen alone or with the support of the Di family. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Di Yujue to not know about this matter since it happened in Diyun City. But if Di Yujue knew and still allowed Di Beichen to do this, then he was completely crazy. I have been dealing with Di Yujue for so many years. Although he has always been swift and decisive in doing things and doesn't lack courage, I have never seen him do such a crazy thing. Xiao Yanlong shook his head. For the head of the family, the most important thing was the interests of the family. They would never agree to anything that would shake the foundation of the family. Even if Di Yujue owed Di Beichen and doted on him, it was impossible for him to do such a thing that would harm the interests of the family. We can consider this matter at length. If all of this is confirmed to be true, then perhaps God is helping us. Jun Hongqing's eyes gradually brightened. Now that they had been suppressed by the Di family, they felt that they had no power to fight back. Every day he worried about what the Jun family situation would be like when the one-year deadline was up. If Di Beichen really did such an incredible thing, then it would be the best opportunity for them to attack the Di family. Even if they couldn't take the opportunity to completely destroy the Di family, as long as they severely damaged the Di family, they could make the Di family disappear from the world completely. As long as there was an opportunity, it would be enough. Xiao Yanlong's face also showed a smile. There is no way out, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I thought that this was already a dead end, but I didn't expect that there would be a way out. Send people to find out about this matter. We will spread this news. I believe that after hearing this news, the major forces will be very angry. When the time comes, they will question Di Beichen one after another. If Di Beichen still insists on establishing the Dark Guild, Di Beichen will definitely be attacked. The Di family can't sit by and do nothing when something happens to their young master, so the Di family will inevitably become the target of public. If Di Beichen chooses to give up under such circumstances, then his reputation will be greatly affected. His reputation, and the Di family will no longer be glorious. No matter what the result was, there were only benefits and no harm to them. On this day, a piece of news quickly spread throughout the upper realm. Was heard? The Di families the young will establish the Sacred Dark Guild? Really? These really is? It's absolutely true. Many people already know about this news. Because he is of the dark attribute, he doesn't want everyone to deny it, so he came up with the idea of establishing the Sacred Dark Guild. The dark attribute has always been looked down upon by the major forces. Young Master Di actually dares to do this. Isn't he courting death? Who knows? Maybe he thinks that he is amazing and can succeed in anything, so he dares to challenge everyone's bottom line. Restaurants, tea houses, streets, and alleys, this shocking news was spread everywhere. Chapter 60-80. Only the Di family knew that Di Beichen was going to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. Even the Lin family was not aware of it. Therefore, when Lin Taxing and the others heard the news, they thought it was a rumor. However, they still went to the Di family as soon as possible. Even if it was just a rumor, they had to refute it. Otherwise, if this rumor spread, it would be extremely detrimental to the entire Di family. Murong Jing, Jiang Wenyan, and Qin Feng were also shocked when they heard the news. Murong Jing and Jiang Wenyan immediately felt that this must be a new method that the Xiao family and the Jun family came up with to deal with Di Beichen. Although they knew that the Jun family and the Xiao family would not stop, such a method was still beyond their expectations. To be honest, this rumor was even richer than their imagination. Only Qin Feng was stunned for a while after hearing the news. His gaze gradually became complicated. He remembered how familiar Di Beichen and Huang Futing were. If his judgment was correct, Huang Futing's group should all be of the dark attribute. Even if Di Beichen and the others hid it when they communicated, he could still see that Huang Futing and the others respected Di Beichen very much. It could even be said that they were obedient to him. He was also very clear about Huang Futing's identity. It was impossible for such a person to become Di Beichen's subordinate without any reason. Moreover, when he was at the Radiant Temple, he clearly did not notice anyone in Huang Futing's group. It was impossible for such a dazzling Radiant Temple to not notice. Therefore, there was only one explanation for this matter, and that was that they had gone to the Dark Temple. Why did so many dark attribute cultivators respect Di Beichen? He did not think much about it at first. However, after hearing the news, he suddenly understood everything. So, this was the real reason. Di Family Conference Hall. Di Yujue stood at the front of the conference hall. His handsome face was solemn. Beichen, now that the news has spread, are you mentally prepared? Father, actually, I've already sent the invitations to the various large guilds' headquarters a few days ago. However, the meeting will take place in 3 days. Di Beichen's expression was calm. His unparalleled face revealed his unswerving determination. A few days ago he had already decided to announce this news to the world. However, before that, he had sent invitations to the various large guilds. Establishing the Dark Sanctum was a matter that belonged to guilds. As long as the guild leaders of the various large guilds were willing to acknowledge the existence of the Dark Sacred Assembly, everything would be complete. As for other people's thoughts, they could only rely on time to gradually change. I've already found the source of the news. It's the work of the Shao and Jun families. Di Yujue's eyes were hazy. He knew that these two families were not easy to deal with. At this time they would definitely ruthlessly trample on him. Di Linxian sighed faintly. This matter is truly too risky. Once it fails, the consequences would be unimaginable. He didn't expect his son and grandson to come up with such a terrible plan, but since it had come to this, all he could do was support them. His grandson was of the dark attribute. If the dark attribute could really make a name for itself, it would be a good thing. Grandfather, I'm very sorry. When Di Beichen looked at Di Linxian, there was an additional trace of apology and guilt in his eyes. Speaking of which, he had stubbornly dragged the entire family down with him. Chapter 6081. Di Beichen was touched by Di Linxuan's benevolence. Even Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel touched. In the aristocratic families, it had always been the cultivators who sacrificed themselves for the family. How many families would stake everything on a single throw just because of an individual's thoughts? Di Beichen and his father didn't tell their grandfather about this matter. On one hand, they were worried that their grandfather would be greatly affected. On the other hand, they were worried that their grandfather would object. However, they didn't expect their grandfather to be so open-minded. They thought that their grandfather might be furious after finding out about this matter. He might object or even question them for not considering the family's safety. However, they didn't expect their grandfather to support them unconditionally. Grandfather, father, Di Beichen and Di Yujue looked at Di Linxian in surprise. Their emotions were complicated. Di Linxian smiled faintly. You and your father made a decision without telling me. Do you really think that I don't know anything? Beichen is the destined young master of our family. No matter if this matter succeeds or not, no matter what the family will become in the end, since it's decided, then go ahead and do it. Some initiatives may seem crazy to many people, but once it succeeds, the change will be very shocking. I feel that Beichen has always had this kind of courage. This might not be a bad thing. Once it succeeds, Beichen will be the president of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Isn't that great? Di Linxian smiled. He had lived to this age and understood many things. However, I still send people to transfer the younger generation. No matter what, the Di family should keep some seedlings. Hearing Di Linxuan's words, Di Beichen's eyes turned sour. Grandfather, thank you. What's there to thank for? We're a family. Di Linxian smiled. Although the family's position has been stable all these years, there hasn't been much change. The reason why we're in the limelight now is because of you and Hongzhuang. I feel that this crazy matter might actually succeed. Everyone couldn't help but smile. Once they succeeded, the Di family would have another force, the Dark Sacred Assembly. In the future, their position would truly be unshakable. If they wanted to succeed, they would have to bear the corresponding risks. They had long understood this. Similarly, after the news of Di Baichen wanting to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly spread out, the Dark Attribute cultivators scattered all over the world seemed to have seen a ray of light. Dark Sanctum? This was a name they didn't even dare to think about, but it was also the thing they looked forward to the most in their dreams. Di Baichen's name was known to almost everyone who practiced the Dark Attribute because he was the only young master of the Dark Attribute family. Not only that, but he also married the Saint of Light. All of this was no different from a legend in their eyes. Everyone would smile when they talked about him because that was their beautiful vision. However, they had never thought that Di Baichen would actually want to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. After a brief moment of shock, almost everyone unanimously made the decision to go to the Emperor Cloud City. They were going to the Dark Sanctum. This was because they were all Dark Attribute cultivators. They understood that after this matter spread out, they would have to face a storm. They also understood that Di Baichen's actions were to give them a protective umbrella. It was precisely because of this that they wanted to protect Di Baichen. Chapter 6082. Cultivators from all over the Upper Realm were rushing to Emperor Cloud City. They were not the only ones. Other onlookers were also gathering in Emperor Cloud City. Now there was a long line on the teleportation array to Emperor Cloud City. We have to be prepared. Now that the news has spread, there must be a lot of cultivators coming. When the time comes, all of us will be responsible for welcoming them. Huang Futing instructed everyone. Before the young master left, he had already instructed them. All Dark Attribute cultivators were members of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Their original intention in establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly was to allow Dark Attribute cultivators to no longer be excluded and to have a way to cultivate. Brother Huangfu, don't worry. We are all ready. Everyone spoke one after another, their eyes full of hope. Over the years, they had tried their best to gather Dark Attribute cultivators together to form a team. However, because Dark Attribute cultivators could not be seen, everything could only be done in secret. Therefore, the results were not very good. Many cultivators did not know of their existence at all, and many of these cultivators were in a more difficult situation than them. The establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly was undoubtedly a good opportunity for everyone to gather together. Through this opportunity, they could meet more cultivators of the same attribute. They were a team. Even if they might face great resistance, their will was as strong as an impregnable fortress. They would never waver. Huang Futing's gaze swept across everyone. After seeing the determination on everyone's faces, he could not help but feel gratified. The young master had already withstood a lot of pressure for them. They could not let the young master worry about these things anymore. When Lin Taxing and the others arrived and found out that the news was not a mistake, but true, their feelings were extremely complicated. None of them thought that Baichen would do such a crazy thing. Now that everything had been publicized, it was too late for them to organize an organization. All the major forces had already known, and now there was no objection to the explanation. Instead of that, it was better to carry out this matter to the end. Lin Wunlan looked at everyone in front of him and could not help but shake his head and sigh. Too impulsive. Why didn't you discuss such a big matter with us? Recently, he had been cultivating in seclusion. When he suddenly heard the news, he did not care about anything else and rushed over immediately. Grandfather, this was my idea, Di Baichen couldn't help but say when he saw Lin Wunlan's anger directed at Di Yujue. What happened back then made his grandfather very dissatisfied with his father. Now that things had finally eased a little, it was inevitable that his grandfather would be angry. However, he couldn't let his father take the blame anymore. To tell you the truth, I actually obtained the Dark Saint's inheritance back then. This was the last wish that my master entrusted to me. So, no matter what, I have to complete it. Di Baichen's expression was serious and solemn as he bowed deeply to Lin Wunlan. His handsome face was somewhat apologetic, but more than that, it was firm and resolute. This was originally just my problem, but it implicated everyone. I'm very sorry. Lin Wunlan, who was originally very dissatisfied with this matter, fell silent after hearing Di Baichen's words. He didn't know that there was such a matter here. Chapter 6083. After hearing Di Baichen's original intention, Lin Wunlan's anger dissipated a little. As the master of an aristocratic family, he had some understanding of the situation of the Dark Attribute cultivators. So far, there was no one more outstanding than Di Baichen among the Dark Attribute cultivators in the Upper Realm. When he first found out that Beichen had the dark attribute, he had a complicated feeling. He felt that the child had a tough life. Back then he left his family not long after he was born. When he finally came back, he awakened the dark attribute. However, what happened later was beyond his expectations. From his point of view, it was extremely difficult for a dark attribute cultivator to increase their cultivation. However, it seemed like the restriction did not exist for D. Beichen. After such a long time, D. Beichen's cultivation did not fall behind at all. On the contrary, it became more and more outstanding. Now that he connected the dots, everything made sense. So Beichen has inherited the dark attribute. No wonder it's like this. Lin Wenlan understood. It was obvious that the inheritance was extraordinary. However, Beichen's master's last wish was too difficult to fulfill. Now that things have come to this, it's useless to talk about the reason. Di Lin Xian said slowly, since it's Beichen's master's last wish, it's Beichen's responsibility to fulfill it. Actually, if you think about it carefully, it might seem crazy, but it's not impossible. It's been a long time since the incident back then. The dark attribute powerhouses have almost disappeared. They've been suppressed all year round, and it's very unfair to the younger generation. Although there will be a lot of resistance, as long as we can convince the leaders of the major guilds, there's still a chance of success. Lin Wenlan fell silent after hearing Di Lin Xian's words. Almost everyone felt that this was a crazy decision the moment they heard the news. However, as long as they thought about it carefully, they would realize that there was still a chance of success. However, the resistance was still very strong. Beichen, are you confident? Lin Wenlan, who had been silent all this while, suddenly asked. Di Beichen looked at Lin Wenlan's serious face and nodded. I believe it will succeed. Since that's the case, I'll take this gamble with you. Di Beichen was slightly startled. Lin Wenlan laughed and said, even old man Di has the courage. Do you think I don't dare? Since it's a responsibility, then don't worry so much. Just do it bravely. Lin Wenlan patted Di Beichen's shoulder with a gratified smile on her face. Nowadays, many cultivators had completely forgotten their master's instructions. They didn't even take a living master seriously, let alone a dead master. Under such circumstances, he increasingly felt that Di Beichen's qualities were extremely valuable. Perhaps it was because Di Beichen was such a person that he was able to obtain the inheritance of darkness. All these years, almost all the dark attribute cultivators had been hoping to obtain the inheritance of darkness. Without the inheritance, they didn't even have the method to cultivate the power of darkness. After connecting all the dots, he felt that Di Beichen was very likely to be the destined person. Perhaps all the impossible would be completed by him. Chapter 6084. Di Beichen's eyes swept over the crowd one by one. The more everyone supported him, the more he felt the responsibility on his shoulders. Everyone in front of him was the person he cared about the most. The establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly could only succeed, not fail. Because he couldn't let the people he cared about lose what they cared about. He had worked so hard to cultivate until now to protect the people he cared about. If everyone fell to the bottom with him, that would be the most unacceptable thing. I will work hard to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly and make it the support of the Di family and the Lin family. His incomparably handsome face was filled with unswerving determination, and his bottomless black eyes were filled with sincerity and conviction. His every word and sentence was so serious that it was like an oath that made people's hearts tremble. Looking at Di Beichen like this, the elders' faces showed relief. Compared to the peaceful atmosphere in the hall, the cultivators of the Di family and the Lin family were restless. In their opinion, everything was developing in a good direction. They didn't understand why the young master would do such a dangerous thing. It is said that many people have now gathered in the Emperor Cloud City. For so many years, the Emperor Cloud City has never been so lively. I feel that everyone's attention is now on our family. When the time comes, if all the major forces blame us, what should we do? Sigh, I really didn't expect the young master to do such an irrational thing. It is said that the family master has already transferred some cultivators away. Don't be so pessimistic, okay? The young master naturally has his reasons for doing this. Maybe he will succeed? Don't be naive. After this incident, the disciples of the Di family had long lost the mood to cultivate. Even the cultivators who were in seclusion were directly blown out by the news. Everyone was talking about this matter, but everyone's mood was very complicated. In the past, they had always been obedient to the young master, but now this matter was really too unsettling. Therefore, the entire Di family was in chaos, and the discussion was full of unconcealable anxiety. Apart from the D family and the Lin family, there was another place where people were talking about the Holy Light Assembly. Almost as soon as the news spread, the Holy Light Assembly was shaken. Lu Hongwei couldn't help but shake his head when he heard the news. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had already told him about it, he was still shocked when he heard the news. "President, have you heard the news that Di Beichen wants to establish the Dark Sanctum?" The deacons of the Radiant Sacred Assembly immediately rushed up and couldn't hold back their doubts. Looking at the anxious faces in front of him, Lu Hongwei nodded slightly. "I've already heard. How could the Saintess allow Di Beichen to do such a thing?" Everyone was depressed. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were known for their good relationship. A few days ago, someone had seen Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang together. Just based on this point, they were sure that Bailey Hongzhuang definitely knew about it. At this time, a deacon seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, "President, the Saintess suddenly came to the guild a few days ago. Could it be for this matter?" As soon as this was said, everyone's eyes turned to Lu Hongwei. Chapter 6085. That's right. The Saintess had already told me about this when she came to the Sacred Assembly. Lu Hongwei did not deny it. Since things had come to this point, everyone should know the truth. "President, since the Saintess had already told you about this, why didn't you stop her?" Everyone was puzzled. They had never thought that the Saintess would come here just to tell the president about this. However, this did lessen the resentment in their hearts a little. At least, the fact that the Saintess was willing to tell him about this in advance proved that she was still responsible. "I couldn't stop her." Lu Hongwei shook his head and sighed. "I've already tried to persuade her before, but it didn't work." "Then what should we do now?" "The Saintess represents the image of our sacred assembly. Now that she's with young Master D, everyone will think that we're involved in this matter. All the members will be dissatisfied with this." Looking at everyone's anxious expressions, Lu Hongwei's expression was very calm. "Then what do you want to do?" "No matter what, we have to get the Saintess out of this matter. Only then will our sacred assembly not be affected," the leader of the deacons said seriously. The Light Sacred Assembly had always been enemies with dark attribute cultivators. Since hundreds of years ago, they were the organization that targeted dark attribute cultivators the most. However, the Saintess was now going to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly with Di Beichen. What kind of scandal was this? Lu Hongwei waved his hand. "This won't work. If it did, I would have stopped her before. There's one thing I want you to be clear about. The Saintess doesn't care about this identity. She already told me this when she came to find me." "President, what do you mean?" Everyone was stunned. Even though they had roughly guessed it, they still found it hard to believe. "If everyone doesn't agree, she'll resign from the position of the Saintess." Silence. There was a deathly silence. Everyone who was clamoring that the Saintess was going overboard immediately shut their mouths. Because this way they would not even have a trump card to threaten the Saintess. If Bailey Hongzhuang cared about this position, they could say that she was no longer the Saintess if she was still so stubborn. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about all this at all. The entire Light Sacred Assembly was not important to her. Then they really could not do anything. Could it be that the Saintess doesn't care about all this? Everyone felt incredulous. Although the title of Saint of Light was just a title, it actually had a lot of advantages. At the very least, there were very few people who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him in terms of status. This was a position that many people yearned for even in their dreams. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't seem to care at all. Facing the man's question, Lu Hongwei rudely shattered his fantasy. She doesn't care. From the beginning to the end, she didn't show that she cared. After understanding Bailey Hongzhuang, he realized that she did not care about fame and fortune. These things that the world pursued had never been important to her. Not only that, she did not expect the position of Saintess to bring her anything. On the contrary, she only felt that she should do something for the Sacred Assembly. It was this kind of mentality that made him, as the president, feel ashamed. Chapter 6086. President, so we can't do anything now? Someone asked, unwilling to give up. We can? Lu Hongwei spread his hands. As long as we choose not to have the saint. Everyone looked at each other. As deacons, they knew how difficult it was for the Sacred Assembly to find the saint over the years. When they first found out that Xiao Sou's talent was extremely close to the requirements, everyone was happy. However, the entire guild had put in a lot of effort to make up for that small gap. The effort they had put in was not something that outsiders could understand. It was only when Bailey Hongzhuang appeared that they realized that everything was in vain. It was because they had made the wrong choice. Although the saint rarely came to the sacred assembly, everyone knew that the saint was not doing nothing. On the contrary, the saint had been working hard to contribute to the sacred assembly. Almost every once in a while, the saint would write a letter about her understanding of the light attribute and send it back. Even though the sacred assembly had been passed down for so many years, everyone was still learning about the attribute power. Originally, everyone thought that the saint had just come to the upper realm and had only been in contact with the light attribute for a short time. Even if she had an unattainable talent in this area, it would be very difficult for her to achieve this. It was not until the saint mentioned this that they realized that the saint's understanding in this area was far beyond their imagination. Even some of the things that they thought were right were wrong after being reminded by the saintess. If Bailey Hongzhuang knew about everyone's guesses, she would definitely find it very interesting. She had the inheritance of the saint and knew the cultivation direction of the light attribute. Even if there were some problems that she did not understand when using it after learning from Granny Hua, she gradually gained a lot of understanding. She had sent these discoveries back to the sacred assembly. She hoped that the sacred assembly would become better and the entire upper realm would become stronger. However, she did not know that the news she sent back would cause such a big commotion in the sacred assembly. "President, we finally found the saint. We can't let her leave just like that. Now that the situation has become like this, what should we do? Are we supposed to agree to this? If we agree to this, I'm afraid that everyone will look at us." Everyone looked at each other. This matter put them in a dilemma. Lu Hongwei spread out his hands. In fact, he had been thinking about this problem for the past few days. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't think of a good solution. The Holy Light Assembly could not afford to lose the Holy Maiden of Light, but they could not sit by and do nothing about the establishment of the Dark Assembly. After being the president for so many years, this was the first time he had encountered such a troublesome problem. "Everyone, don't be anxious. Let's see what the other guilds think first." Lu Hongwei sighed. He felt that he needed to make a trip to Emperor Cloud City. As early as a few days ago, he had received an invitation from Di Beiqin, and the presidents of other guilds had also received it. He believed that the guild leaders of the various large guilds were feeling very conflicted. If everyone sat down and had a good discussion, they might be able to come up with a solution. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Under such circumstances, they could only wait for now. Chapter 6087. Dark Sacred Assembly Headquarters. Di Beiqin and Bailey Hongzhuang had been waiting for the arrival of the leaders of the various guilds since early in the morning. The invitation letter that they handed out said that they were meeting today. They originally wanted to wait until everyone arrived before talking about this matter properly, but they didn't expect the news to leak out faster than them. In the blink of an eye, the news had already spread out. They were very clear that this was most likely Zhao Jian's doing. The Jun and Xiao families must have added fuel to the fire and thought of ways to spread this news, which was why the news spread so quickly. They didn't care about this. Anyway, this scene was destined to come, it was just a matter of time. Silence. There were clearly many people gathered in the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly, but everyone couldn't help but maintain silence, making the entire guild seem abnormally quiet. As the sky became brighter, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the entrance of the Sacred Assembly from time to time, looking forward to the arrival of the various leaders. She understood that when the various leaders arrived, they would inevitably have fierce words, but they also hoped that they could persuade them with their own strength. Time passed by minute, and everyone in the Sacred Assembly waited silently. However, as the sky gradually changed, everyone's hearts gradually sank. "Master, it's already afternoon, but they still haven't appeared, could it be?" Xiao He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a complicated expression and asked tentatively. For such a long time, because it knew how serious the situation today was, it didn't break the silence. However, it clearly remembered that the time written on the invitation letter was in the morning. It was already afternoon, but they still hadn't appeared. Did that mean that the various leaders didn't plan to come at all? Bailey Hongzhuang only looked at Xiao He but didn't answer. Di Beiqin also sat expressionlessly. His deep and charming eyes didn't seem to have any emotions at this moment, but everyone knew that his feelings must be the most complicated. Everyone in the Sacred Assembly's hearts sank. They originally thought that they could try to persuade the various leaders after they arrived. As long as they succeeded, then everything would turn around. However, the various leaders of the Sacred Assembly weren't even willing to come, which also proved their inner thoughts. Rejection. No room for discussion. That one action had already made everything clear. At the same time, this decision also cut off all their escape routes. The sky grew darker and darker. When night fell, Bailey Hongzhuang also lowered her eyes. It seemed that the various large guilds were more resolute than they had thought. She put her hand on Di Beichen's hand and said with concern, "Beichen, things will definitely turn for the better." The problems left behind after so many years weren't easy to solve. The attitude of the various large guilds wasn't unexpected. However, disappointment was unavoidable. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and interlocked their fingers. This was the first time Bailey Hongzhuang felt that Di Beichen's hand was a little cold. Usually his hand was wide and warm. As long as she felt that temperature, she would feel incomparably at ease. But this time, his hand felt cold to the touch, as if revealing the worry in his heart. She couldn't help but put her other hand on top of his as well, wanting to give him more warmth. She understood Beichen. He had always been a very responsible person. No matter how carefree he usually acted, he always thought about all of this in his heart. Chapter 6088. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't open her mouth to ask Di Beichen to relax because she knew very well that it was simply impossible. This was a decision that carried the burden of the entire family. Even if everyone was saying not to worry and that things would develop in a good direction, everyone's hearts were shrouded in a dark cloud. It was like a taut string. Once it snapped, no one knew what would happen. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's worried gaze, Di Beichen's lips gradually curved into a smile. This smile didn't rise, but it broke the deadpan expression on his face, and there was a trace of gentleness in his cold lines. "Don't worry about me." Di Beichen reached out and poked Bailey Hongzhuang's worried face. "A smile suits you better." Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a slight smile. There are more and more cultivators reporting to the sacred assembly these days. Looking at the smiles on the faces of those dark attribute cultivators, she felt that all of this was worth it. Di Beichen nodded slightly. This might be the only thing worth rejoicing about at the moment. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen waited for a day, the guild leaders who had never appeared all appeared at the headquarters of the Light Sacred Assembly. For a long time, the Light Sacred Assembly had been the leader of the 7 major guilds. Usually, whenever there was something to discuss, everyone would gather here. Originally, everyone didn't know what was going on after receiving the invitation, but for the sake of young Master Di and the Light Sacred Lady, they planned to go. However, when this news came out, they couldn't remain calm. The most important thing was that if they went, no one knew what the situation would be like, so they must inform each other before going. "President Lu, we can't agree to this matter no matter what," Luo Qinghao, the Wood Attribute Guild leader, said resolutely. "The Dark Attribute has always been in existence that we have resisted. If the Dark Sacred Assembly is established, then the future situation will be completely changed. Once the catastrophe happens again, the entire upper realm won't be able to withstand another disaster." Guild leader Luo is right. All these years, those with the dark attribute have been searching for a solution, but we've suppressed them all. Now that the Saint of Light has suddenly stirred up trouble, we are also in a difficult position. Feng Yuxian, the Water Faction's guild master, also spoke up. "President Lu, I think you should solve this problem. Then the rest of our matters will be easier." Resistance was their unified attitude, and the only problem that needed to be solved was this. While the presidents were having a heated discussion, the president of the metal attribute, Song Langtian, had not spoken. When he first heard the news, he was extremely shocked. However, when he thought about what Bailey Hongzhuang said when she was treating Zhu Qin, he suddenly understood. So this was what the Holy Maiden wanted. At that time he didn't understand. He only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was making an excuse to make them feel at ease. Now he understood that the Holy Maiden really needed help. However, this matter was simply too unexpected. It was such a huge matter that even he found it hard to believe. Such an action was simply challenging all the guilds, but when he thought of Bailey Hongzhuang's kindness to them, he couldn't say anything more. At the very least, if you asked him to take action against Bailey Hongzhuang, he would absolutely not do it. Chapter 6089. The last time he came to the Holy Light Assembly, he learned that President Lu admired Bailey Hongzhuang very much. However, none of them had expected such a thing to happen. Even he felt very hesitant now, let alone President Lu. He believed that President Lu's inner struggle was no less than his. Sure enough, he noticed the helplessness in President Lu's eyes in the blink of an eye. When he looked at Lu Hongwei was also looking at him. Among everyone, the two of them understood each other's thoughts the best. What do you think now? Lu Hongwei asked with a solemn expression. In the current situation, they really had to make a decision first because everyone was discussing this matter. If they didn't speed up, it would really be too late. Luo Qinghao said without hesitation, "This matter is very simple. Destroy the dark sacred assembly." As soon as he said this, everyone's eyes fell on him. Everyone is very clear about the danger of the dark attribute. Ordinary cultivators won't awaken the dark attribute. This dark attribute also represents a person's personality to a certain extent. What happened back then is still vivid in our minds. We can only give everyone an explanation by destroying the dark sacred assembly. Luo Qinghao's expression was serious, and his every word was filled with determination. That's right. The dark sacred assembly must not be established. Otherwise, it will definitely cause a lot of trouble. Now, Di Beichen only wants to establish the dark sacred assembly. We have to let them understand that establishing a guild is never a simple matter. His strength alone is far from enough. A trace of coldness flashed in the eyes of Yan Yi, the president of the Fire Attribute Guild. Young people nowadays are so lawless just because they have some ability. They want to challenge the rules set by everyone. It's simply wishful thinking. Everyone nodded. Thinking back to when they heard about the reputation Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang had made for themselves, they admired them very much. After all, to have such strength in the younger generation was enough to prove their talent and potential. However, after this incident, their views had completely changed. The saying "newborn calves are not afraid of tigers" was exactly what Di Beichen was saying. The more Luo Qinghao, Yan Yi and Feng Yuxian spoke, the more they felt that it was reasonable. They were filled with righteous indignation and wished that they could destroy the dark sacred assembly right now. I hope that our absence today can teach them a lesson and let them understand our attitude. Luo Qinghao's face was ashen and he couldn't hide his anger. If they had given up on this idea after knowing our attitude, then things wouldn't have developed to this extent. In his opinion, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were both God's favored children. As long as they did not take the wrong path, their future achievements would not be bad. Why did he have to do such a thing to challenge authority? He only felt that this was the fearless personality of young people. As long as they suffered, they would understand that some things simply could not be challenged. Hearing Luo Qinghao's words, everyone nodded. In fact, the Di family and the Lin family were getting stronger and stronger. If possible, they didn't want to be enemies with these two forces. However, it all depended on Di Beichen's attitude. If Di Beichen insisted, then they had no other choice. Chapter 60-90. He was a little hesitant. When he first heard about the Dark Sacred Assembly, it was indeed shocking. But after thinking about it carefully, so many years had passed, and those who should rise would eventually rise. No one knew whether their actions were right or wrong. As Song Langtian's voice fell, everyone turned their eyes and looked at Song Langtian in surprise, as if they couldn't believe that he would say such a thing at this time. Song Langtian, what do you mean by this? Do you still want to support the establishment of the Dark Society? Luo Qinghao looked at Song Langtian in disbelief, and asked in a questioning tone, "Have you forgotten the lesson from back then? I'm sure you're well aware of how terrifying the methods of dark attribute cultivators are." "That's not what I mean." Song Langtian frowned. "I'm just talking about another possibility. In fact, we all understand that it has been hundreds of years since that incident, and the dark attribute cultivators have been suppressed for so many years. I believe that there are also dark attribute cultivators around you, but are they really so heinous? If we don't speculate on Di Beichen's malicious intentions, maybe they are just doing this to give the dark attribute cultivators a space to develop freely. They just hope that everyone can treat them fairly and justly. They don't want to do anything harmful to the existence of the world." Before coming into contact with Bailey Hongzhuang, his thoughts might be the same as Luo Qinghao and others, but after seeing how hardworking Bailey Hongzhuang was, he felt that these young people might not be as complicated as they thought. Perhaps their original intentions were the simplest and purest. Lu Hongwei was a little surprised that Song Langtian would say such a thing, but in fact, after chatting with Bailey Hongzhuang at that time, he had also thought about this issue carefully. Although he didn't admit it, he knew very well in his heart that in some respect, he agreed with Bailey Hongzhuang's point of view. It was just that in his current position he couldn't say all this clearly. Now that Song Langtian took the initiative to mention this point, he also wanted to take this opportunity to say a few words for Bailey Hongzhuang. Guild leader Song is right. Do you remember Huang Fu Ting from the Huang Fu family in this day and age? Back then he was also a peerless talent. However, ever since that incident he had long since disappeared without a trace. These young people didn't do anything wrong, but they had to pay such a high price. After hearing the words of Song Langtian and Lu Hongwei, Luo Yinghao and the others couldn't help but stand up, looking extremely complicated. So, President, what do you mean by that? Luo Qinghao asked. Feng Yuxian looked serious as well. Are you planning to support the establishment of the Dark Society? Her voice was extremely loud. Perhaps because she was too shocked, the sound of the rain became sharp as she spoke. This was a situation that they had never imagined. In their minds, President Lu would be the first to object. But now, President Lu actually said the opposite. This was simply inconceivable to them. Sensing the incredulous gazes of the crowd, Lu Hongwei faintly sighed. He had not thought of how to deal with this matter. Chapter 6091. That's not what I meant. I just think we can look at this matter from another perspective. Lu Hongwei said slowly. President, there's no need to say more about this matter. Yin Ye's face turned cold. In fact, we have no room to change this matter at all. We need to give everyone an explanation. For so many years, the situation of the 6 major guilds and the Great Sacred Assembly has never changed. Everyone is used to the existence of the Dark Sacred Assembly, and everyone rejects dark attribute cultivators. If we agree to this matter, then how should we face the others? Even if we can face the others, we have no way to face the past presidents. Yes, President, I understand that you said this because Bailey Hongzhuang is the Holy Maiden of Light. You don't want this matter to involve her, so you said such words. But you are also the President of the Sacred Assembly. I hope you can make an objective decision on this matter. Feng Yuxian frowned. She had always admired President Lu, but she never thought that President Lu would also be muddle-headed on this matter. In order to be biased towards Bailey Hongzhuang, he even said such words. Luo Qinghao looked at Song Langtian with a livid expression. If you still insist on your attitude and agree to the establishment of the Dark Society, then the conflict between us will be inevitable. Although there had always been contact between the guilds, there was also competition. The presidents of the major guilds had always been competing with each other, and no one was willing to give in. They believed that the entire Wood Attribute Guild would be dissatisfied with Song Langtian's decision. At that time, Song Langtian might not even be able to keep his position as the president. Looking at Luo Qinghao's serious look, Song Langtian understood the other party's thoughts and immediately said, My original intention is actually the same as President Lu's. Luo Qinghao, don't misunderstand me too much. Facing such a situation, Song Langtian sighed inwardly. Even if he wanted to help Bailey Hongzhuang, he understood that there was no possibility at all based on the situation in front of him. At this moment, the president of the Thunder Attribute Guild, Lei Ming, who had been silent, suddenly said, Since everyone's thoughts are the same, then this matter is decided. If they can take this opportunity to repent and give up on this plan, then this matter will be over. But if they don't repent and continue, then we can only use force. Everyone be prepared. If the D family and the Lin family insist on protecting them, then we will have no choice but to take action. Seeing Thunder's serious expression, everyone fell silent. Although the Thunder Attribute Guild was only a guild and not a sacred assembly, due to Thunder's strength, his words carried a lot of weight. Lu Hongwei had always been the leader of the 7 great guilds, but he didn't know what to say in this situation. Because he hadn't even thought through his own attitude. After confirming that none of the guild leaders would arrive, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to their residence. Xiren and the others had always been very concerned about this matter. When they saw the two of them return, they immediately went to greet them. Beichen, what's the situation? Xiren had an anxious look on his face. He was about to go crazy from staying here today. Chapter 6092. Di Beichen's expression was solemn. He didn't hide anything in front of his friends. Today's matter indeed made him feel that the resistance to establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly was much greater than they had imagined. He originally wanted to take this opportunity to persuade everyone so that things wouldn't be so serious. However, the other party's attitude was very firm. They didn't even have the chance to persuade them. Looking at Di Beichen's solemn expression, Shangguan Ying and Wen Ziren understood that this matter wasn't so optimistic. Hong Zhuang, what's going on? Can you tell us quickly? Shangguan Ying turned her attention to Bailey Hongzhuang. Her delicate face couldn't hide her worry. As friends, they really wanted to help. However, in the face of such a big matter, they clearly understood that their strength was too small. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't hide anything. We waited for a day but no one came. As soon as she said this, Shangguan Ying and Wen Ziren were stunned at first. They only felt that the situation wasn't as complicated as they thought. However, after thinking about it carefully, they felt that the situation seemed to be even worse. So, this shows their attitude? Shangguan Ying asked tentatively. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right. I'm afraid it's impossible to persuade them. Then what should we do now? Wen Ziren scratched his head. He only felt that the situation was far more troublesome than they had imagined. In this way, it seemed that they couldn't find any direction at all. At this time, Di Beichen suddenly said, "Let's establish it directly in 3 days." His magnetic voice had a charming charm. It was as pleasant as the sound of nature. However, when everyone heard the content clearly, they couldn't help but be stunned. Their eyes were full of astonishment. "Beichen, you mean to announce the establishment directly?" Wen Ziren was stunned. Di Beichen nodded. "Now that the news has been announced, since it's imperative, why worry so much? We've already sent out invitations. It's fine if they don't want to come. They'll definitely come in 3 days." "That's true, but... Beichen, have you really thought this through?" Ziren's usual joking expression was replaced with an extremely serious one. Beichen was his good brother. If something went wrong this time, they would not be able to bear the consequences. "I've thought about it." Di Beichen smiled faintly, his expression unreadable. "From the day I chose to establish it, I had already thought about all of this. Just because someone is against it doesn't mean that everyone is against it. I believe that there will still be people who will support it. There are so many dark attribute cultivators standing behind us. How can we bear to disappoint them?" Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two fell silent. Although it had only been a few days since the news had spread, the faces of all the dark attribute cultivators who had come were brimming with excitement. Especially after knowing the danger they would face, not a single one of them chose to back down. Even Wen Ziren, who was not a dark attribute cultivator, felt touched by their unity, let alone Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. "Beichen, since you've already decided, as your brother, I'll definitely support you." Wen Ziren smiled. "I'll go tell everyone to spread the news. Thank you for your hard work. You too must be tired today. Go back and have a good rest." Chapter 6093. Currently, Emperor Cloud City was already packed with people from various powers. Hence, the speed at which this news spread far exceeded everyone's expectations. Even if everyone already knew the news, when Di Beichen really released the news, everyone couldn't help but feel surprised. Di Beichen is really bold. He's announcing the establishment of the Dark Church in 3 days. The various large guilds haven't even expressed their stance yet. I think the reason why Di Beichen left these 3 days is to give the leaders of the major guilds some time to react, right? Actually, as long as the various large guilds' attitudes remain unchanged, it's all the same. The newly established Dark Sacred Assembly is no match for the 7 large guilds. These dark attribute cultivators are really bold. When the time comes, they'll definitely face a devastating blow. Sarcastic remarks were everywhere in Emperor Cloud City. Everyone was watching this matter with the mentality of watching a good show. The reason they had come here was to watch the development of this matter. As for taking action, they didn't need to do anything. The 7 large guilds would deal with this matter directly. This was because everyone understood that this order was maintained by the 7 large guilds. When such a thing happened, the 7 large guilds' attitude would be the most resolute. Xiao family Xiao Yanlong and Junhong Qing sat together. The two of them didn't go to Emperor Cloud City, but they were well aware of the city's situation from the constant updates they received. This Di Beichen is really stubborn. He's announcing the establishment of the Dark Church. The Di family didn't stop him. Xiao Yanlong had a smug smile on his face, and he seemed extremely relaxed. Ever since the end of his training in the primordial battlefield, he hadn't felt so relaxed. The Di family was like a mountain pressing down on his heart, making it impossible for him to feel at ease. Only, he hadn't expected that the heavens would give him such a good opportunity. With the 7 large guilds taking action, the Di family and Lin family might not even need to worry about it. If they couldn't, then they'd have to clean up the mess. It wasn't easy for Du Jue to find this son of his. I'm afraid that he only knows how to dote on him and agree to whatever he wants. However, he doesn't know that this will not only harm Di Beichen, but also implicate the entire family. Junhong Qing chuckled. Indeed, success and failure were all due to the same cause. The Di family's reputation had soared because of Di Beichen, but it was also because of Di Beichen that they had fallen into such a situation. Let's wait patiently. There will be a good show in 3 days. The guild leaders of the major guilds were the most furious when they heard the news. They had thought that Di Beichen would be more tactful and give up on the idea of inviting him. However, they didn't. It was only the second day, and Di Beichen had decided to establish it in 3 days. He didn't put them in his eyes at all. This is too much. Luo Qinghao couldn't hold back the anger in his heart after hearing the news. Since Di Beichen has made up his mind to do this, then we have no choice but to be impolite. Yan Yi nodded and said with a livid face, if he announces the establishment of the Dark Church in 3 days, then we'll wait until that day to go and make this impossible. Song Langtian sighed faintly. Di Beichen's temper was too unyielding. This approach was tantamount to intensifying the original conflict. Chapter 6094. The 3-day deadline arrived as promised. During this period of time, everything around the Dark Sacred Assembly had been completed. A huge square was located near the Dark Sacred Assembly. This was the place where the Dark Attribute members could listen to the President's speech. It was also the place where the Dark Sacred Assembly was announced today. Early in the morning, the entire Emperor Cloud City seemed to have been awakened. It was extremely lively. Everyone couldn't hold back their curiosity and walked toward the Dark Square. They understood that there would be a good show today, the most lively show in the entire Upper Realm. All the major powers arrived one after another. The inns and restaurants in the entire Emperor Cloud City were already full. Many people could only spend the night outside the city. However, this didn't stop the enthusiasm of the crowd. If they missed such a lively occasion, it would be a lifelong regret. If Di Beichen came to Emperor Cloud City, he would find many familiar faces here. Almost all the powers he met during his daily training were here. Murong Jing and the others had been worried since they arrived, while Nangong Yuqing and the others were here to watch a good show. I really didn't expect this news to be true. Murong Jing couldn't help but sigh. Even now that he had arrived in Emperor Cloud City, he still felt unreal. It hadn't been long since the training in the ancient battlefield. He had never heard Di Beichen mention this matter before. He didn't expect it to be true all of a sudden. For them there were no signs at all. They couldn't help worrying, but it seemed like there was nothing they could do to help. Beichen is really a godlike man. Jiang Wenyan sighed with emotion. I was still in seclusion. As soon as I heard the news, I hurried over. It's fine if he doesn't make a sound, but when he does, he amazes everyone. Qin Feng sighed with emotion. He had seen a lot of geniuses in the past, but only Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were able to shock him like this. Jiang Wenyan shook his head. I feel that they are usually quite amazing. Now it's not just amazing, it's terrifying. Not to mention the younger generation, even their parents wouldn't have the courage to do something like this. However, Di Beichen had done it. Thinking about it carefully, he was probably the only person in the entire upper realm capable of doing something like this. Murong Jing Jiang Wenyan, this is great. Di Beichen is going to do something so heinous. Are you still planning to support him? Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but interrupt Murong Jing and the others who were talking. Normally, Di Beichen and the others were like brothers. Now that such a big thing had happened, this so-called alliance? Hearing this voice, Murong Jing and the others couldn't help but turn around. Seeing Nangong Yuqing's smug expression, their faces sank. This guy had been taught a lesson by Beichen for so long, yet he was still jumping around. Nangong Yuqing, don't say I didn't warn you. You've been suppressed by Beichen for so long. Previously, Beichen was focused on Jun Lingxuan and couldn't be bothered to make a move against you. Now that Jun Lingxuan is gone, if you continue to be so happy, I'm afraid you'll have a tragic end. Chapter 6095. Nangong Yuqing clearly hadn't expected Jiang Wenyan to say such words to him. He blanked for a moment before his face turned ashen. His voice was heavy and filled with unwillingness as he glared at Jiang Wenyan. I didn't expect that you would still refuse to give up at this time. The major guilds won't let D Baichen off. At that time, let alone D Baichen, even the D family and the Lin family will suffer a huge blow. It's impossible for D Baichen to deal with me. Jiang Wenyan's expression sank. Even if he didn't like D Baichen, he couldn't help but worry about D Baichen's current situation. At this time Murong Jing said, Nangong Yuqing, didn't you always think that Baichen wasn't your opponent? What happened in the end? Don't be too confident. Otherwise, the one who will end up as a joke will be you, Qin Feng added lazily. You? Nangong Yuqing pointed at the three people in front of him. These three were echoing each other, making it impossible for him to win. You will regret this. The three of them sneered but no longer paid any attention to him. This Nangong Yuqing used to be an outstanding person. However, for some unknown reason he has become more and more despicable in the past 2 years. Maybe he's depressed from being bullied by Baichen. When Nangong Yuqing turned around to leave, he heard Qin Feng and Jiang Wenyan's discussion and immediately staggered. You're the one who's depressed from being bullied. Bailey Hongzhuang and D Baichen sat quietly in the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly, looking at the changes in the sky. Soon the appointed time would arrive. Bai Lian Che Linger and the others were beside them. Everyone was clearly gathered together, but none of them spoke. The atmosphere was so heavy that it seemed as if even the air had frozen. Young Master D, Miss Bailey, long time no see. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and saw a familiar figure that she hadn't seen for a long time, Ouyang Jifeng. Young Master Ouyang? Bailey Hongzhuang stood up, her face as elegant as a lotus flower rising out of the water, slightly surprised. Back then he met Ouyang Jifeng at the alchemy competition, but it was said that later on he put most of his energy into alchemy, so the number of times they met was not many. However, today's matter was so sensational that it wasn't strange for him to appear here. The only thing they didn't expect was that he would actually come looking for them. Are you surprised to see me? Ouyang Jifeng smiled faintly. D Baichen spread out his hands. His devilish face was very calm and no one could tell what he was thinking. Please sit. Ouyang Jifeng took the opportunity to sit down and said, Actually, I didn't come here for any other reason. I just admire your courage. When I first heard the news I was very shocked. I couldn't connect you to this matter at all. Now, it seems that your courage is really something ordinary people don't have. Young Master Ouyang, you flatter us. Actually, we are also worried now. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Even if she didn't have much contact with Ouyang Jifeng, she also understood that this person wasn't a person with complicated thoughts. There was no need to be too afraid. To be honest, my big brother is also of the dark attribute. All these years, because of his attribute, he rarely appeared in the eyes of the world. He is also a genius, but because of this matter, his future was ruined in vain. Chapter 6096. Ouyang Jifeng had a warm smile on his face, but his eyes were very serious. Bailey Hongzhuang could even see the sadness in his eyes. She never knew that Ouyang Jifeng had such an elder brother, but after thinking about Huang Futing's situation she could understand. With Huang Futing's position in the family he still chose to leave. It was not strange that Ouyang Jifeng had such an elder brother. In fact, they believed that every force had dark attribute cultivators, but they had always lived in the dark and no one had ever noticed. Thank you. D Baichen's lips slowly raised into a smile. At this time even a word of support was rare and precious. Because of this matter, many forces that wanted to be on good terms with the family took the opportunity to retreat, as if everything before was illusory. It was because of this that support at this time was even more precious. Ouyang Jifeng felt the change in D Baichen's attitude. His smile became brighter and his eyes were firm. I will do my best for this matter. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were all stunned, and some even doubted what they had heard. I am the young master of the Ouyang family. I can represent the Ouyang family. Ouyang Jifeng's voice rang out once again, making everyone understand that he was serious about what he said. D Baichen stared at Ouyang Jifeng. His sharp eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. After a while he smiled and slowly stretched out his right hand. Welcome, ally. Thank you. Ouyang Jifeng shook D Baichen's hand. Both of them used a lot of strength. When they shook hands their bones protruded slightly, showing their persistence and faith. When they sat down again, everyone's attitude towards Ouyang Jifeng had changed. They were more intimate. Actually, the current situation is very worrying. I heard some news. A few days ago, The leaders of the 7 major guilds had gathered in the Holy Light Assembly. They must be discussing this matter. Although there hasn't been any movement in the past 2 days, I can be sure that they will appear today. Ouyang Jifeng said in a deep voice. This is also within my expectations. Di Beichen's expression was calm. The reason why he directly announced it was because of this. Since they would come sooner or later, they might as well appear together. If they could survive today, they would get better and better in the future. If they couldn't, he would never let such a thing happen. The 7 major guilds will never agree to this. After the incident, the upper realm set a rule. Only the 7 major guilds will not allow the rise of the dark attribute. When my elder brother decided on the dark attribute, we were not convinced and wanted to take the opportunity to change, but later reality told us that it was too difficult. Perhaps we didn't have such courage back then, but you did. You've done too many things beyond my imagination. What do you think they will do? Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. Ouyang Jifeng muttered, I think they will appear directly and stop the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Your direct announcement has angered them. If we guessed wrong, they will definitely bring people here today to destroy the headquarters of the Dark Sacred Assembly and interrupt its establishment. Once you resist, your entire family will be implicated. Chapter 6097. So, the most important thing is still strength, Di Beichen said slowly. This matter could be said to be simple, but it could also be said to be difficult. As long as they were strong enough to suppress the leaders of the 7 major guilds, then all these difficulties would be nothing. This was because this was a world controlled by the strong. Your family should have many strong people, right? Ouyang Jifeng looked at Di Beichen seriously. As far as I know, the strongest among the 7 major guilds are President Lu and President Lei of the Thunder Attribute Guild. As long as we can suppress them, then this matter will be much easier to resolve. Di Beichen's eyes were as dark as the night. He had also discussed this matter with his father, and their thoughts were almost the same. The strength of the guild leaders could never be underestimated. When they joined forces, their strength would be extremely terrifying. Young master, it's time, Huang Futing reminded as he looked at the sky outside. Di Beichen nodded slightly, then slowly walked out of the Dark Sacred Assembly's door and walked toward the square behind. At this moment, the square was already surrounded by people. Almost all the people who were rarely seen on normal days had appeared here. This scene could not even be compared to the Light Saint succession ceremony. When that noble and oppressive figure appeared, everyone's eyes fell on him. He was a man full of magic. Wherever he appeared, everyone's eyes would involuntarily be attracted to him. And today he was the main character. He wore a black robe with red burning flames embroidered on the tail of the robe. A fiery red flame belt was tied around his waist, making his tall figure seem even more outstanding. His face had always been extremely good-looking. The entire upper realm knew that Di Beichen was famous for being a handsome man. When they saw him today, everyone could not help but be captivated by his handsome face. It was a shockingly handsome face. His facial features seemed to be carved by the heavens. The contours of his face were as sharp as a knife, cold and hard but not lacking in handsomeness. A pair of eyes containing a mysterious light restrained this fierce and frightening light. With just a glance, people could not help but lower their heads, not daring to look at those eyes containing powerful strength. Under the gazes of countless people, he quietly appeared on the high platform as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Looking at that proud figure, the people who originally wanted to ridicule him inexplicably felt their lips dry up. They could not say what they wanted to say. This aura had already surpassed them by too much. Ridicule? What right did they have to ridicule someone who was more outstanding than them in many aspects? Diu Jue and the others looked at Di Beichen on the high platform, and their hearts were filled with pride. Having such a son was really something to be proud of. Even if what happened next was beyond their expectations, they were prepared to deal with it. Bailey Hongzhuang stood below the stage, looking at the man on the stage, her clear eyes overflowing with satisfaction and worship. She admired this man. She admired his courage, his wisdom, and everything about him. She was even more grateful because this was her man. Shengguan Yingying stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang and whispered, Hongzhuang, look, the Xiao family and the Jun family are there. Chapter 6098. Xiao Sui didn't come. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly retracted her gaze. Shengguan Yingying nodded her head. Looks like the news we heard is correct. Xiao Sou is really pregnant. She must be nursing the fetus at home and doesn't want everyone to know about this. Otherwise, how could she not appear at such a lively time? As expected. On the high platform, Di Beichen looked at the dense crowd below and said with a calm expression, "Thank you everyone for coming here to witness the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly." Just one sentence ignited the hearts of everyone below the stage. Behind me are all darkness-type cultivators. Di Beichen pointed his finger to the back of the high platform. Behind them was also a dense crowd of people. However, everyone was wearing the Dark Guild's uniform and could be recognized at a glance. When so many people gathered together, the scene was extremely spectacular. Huang Futing and the rest stood in the crowd, wearing clothes that showed their identity. Everyone's heart was filled with pride. At least today, they didn't have to hide and worry about being discriminated against because of their attribute. Today they could openly stand here and tell everyone that they were darkness attribute cultivators and that they were fearless. Because of the calamity back then, the darkness attribute had been silent for too many years. Every darkness attribute cultivator was implicated. All these years they were like rats on the street and lived very miserably. But Di Beichen emphasized his tone. What happened back then had nothing to do with anyone behind me. Because of what happened in the past, they suffered for so many years. This kind of life that couldn't see the light of day is not something that everyone here can understand. Since there are 8 attributes in the world, then there shouldn't be only 7 major guilds but 8 major guilds. Therefore today I announce that the Dark Sacred Assembly is officially established. Following Di Beichen's words, the darkness attribute cultivators cheered one after another. The heaven-shaking cheers stunned everyone present. This momentum was too shocking, far beyond their imagination. All along, no one had placed the darkness attribute cultivators in their eyes. In their eyes, these people were just a pile of loose sand and couldn't do anything. However, when this group of people gathered together, they realized that this was also a force that couldn't be underestimated. Most importantly, from these people's eyes, they could see the passion that they hadn't felt for a long time. They even noticed that these people's eyes were filled with fanatical worship when they looked at Di Beichen. That kind of worship was like the worship of believers toward the Lord. They believed from the bottom of their hearts. This kind of situation was the dream of almost every person in power, but everyone knew that it was almost impossible to achieve this. However, Di Beichen really did it. Xiao Yanlong and Jun Hongqing couldn't help but look at each other. They seemed to have underestimated Di Beichen's preparations. Even they felt that this kind of trust was terrifying. These believers were probably blind to Di Beichen. That kind of fanaticism made it seem that no matter what Di Beichen asked them to do, they would be willing to do it, even if it meant giving up their lives. Chapter 6099. I didn't notice Di Beichen's preparations in this regard before. I didn't expect him to be able to do it to this extent. Xiao Yanlong's heart was filled with shock. This Di Beichen made him feel very scared. Just the increase in his cultivation in the past 2 years was already very shocking. How could he have the time to not set up such a big trap at this time? Even if they put all their effort into it, it would not be easy to do it, but Di Beichen had done it. Now he could only hope that the Dark Sacred Assembly would not be established successfully. Otherwise, once it succeeded, the Dark Sacred Assembly would completely become the Di family's backing. Even if it was in the name of the Sacred Assembly because of Di Beichen's existence, the two had almost merged into one. In addition to Bailey Hongzhuang's weight in the Light Sacred Assembly, with the support of the Dark Sacred Assembly and the Light Sacred Assembly, the Di family might directly become the #1 family in the upper realm. In the past he would only think about this in his dreams. It was too difficult to achieve this, but unknowingly the Di family had fulfilled all of this. As long as the Dark Sacred Assembly was successfully established today, then all of this would only be a matter of time. Once this child grows up, he will be very terrifying. Jun Hongqing's face was gloomy. Looking at the stunning figure on the high platform, his mood was extremely complicated. Previously he had never understood how his son could not compare to Di Beichen. Why was it that every time he went out to train he would be defeated by Di Beichen? This time he understood. The two of them looked at each other, countless thoughts flashing through their minds. Thinking about all the things that had happened over the years, they felt even more depressed and regretful. Don't worry, he won't succeed. After a long while, Jun Hongqing suddenly said. Xiao Yanlong nodded slightly. The possibility of this kind of thing succeeding was too low. Di Baichen indeed could not succeed. But for some reason, if the person standing on the high platform was someone else, they would be almost certain of the result. However, at this moment the one standing on the high platform was Di Baichen. Their hearts were inexplicably uncertain. From now on, the upper realm will have one more elemental guild, the Dark Sanctum. This is the home of all darkness attribute cultivators. Here, everyone can also obtain the darkness attribute cultivation method. Di Baichen smiled confidently. He believed in everyone's talent and strength. Even if the current darkness attribute cultivators were much weaker than the other guilds, Shifeng was confident that many outstanding darkness attribute cultivators would emerge in time. Dark Sacred Assembly. Dark Sacred Assembly. All the cultivators of the Sacred Assembly shouted in unison. Chapter 6100. It took a lot of courage to face those soul-stirring eyes. Everyone stared at this scene in a daze. Clearly, many people wanted to stop the Dark Sacred Assembly before it was announced, but for some reason, none of them took action until now. Looking at Di Baichen, who was speaking frankly on the high platform, Xiao Yanlong couldn't help but feel anxious. Why hasn't the 7 Sacred Assemblies guild leaders appeared yet? If they still didn't appear, then the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly would be regarded as a tacit agreement, and it would be even more difficult to stop it in the future. Don't worry, they're here. A smile appeared on Jun Hongcheng's face. His originally anxious face suddenly relaxed, and unconcealable joy appeared on his face. Xiao Yanlong was slightly stunned, and after sensing the tyrannical auras, he quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Dark Sacred Assembly, we disagree. Just as Di Baichen was speaking frankly and confidently, introducing the Dark Sacred Assembly's purpose to everyone, a cold and dignified voice suddenly resounded, exploding on the high platform like thunder, clearly entering the ears of everyone present. Following the appearance of this voice, the entire plaza seemed to freeze for a moment. Everyone's mind trembled. Immediately after, they noticed that 7 figures had suddenly appeared on the high platform. Facing these figures, everyone didn't find them unfamiliar, because they were none other than the guild leaders of the 7 great guilds. Luo Qinghao stared coldly at Di Baichen and spoke again. We disagree with the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Hongzhuang. Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang, her eyes filled with urgency. Bailey Hongzhuang's body tensed up when the guild leaders of the 7 great guilds appeared. Even though she had long since expected such a situation, she couldn't help but feel nervous when it truly happened. Let's watch first. Bailey Hongzhuang suppressed the complicated thoughts in her heart and calmed down. Diu Jue Lin Wenlan, and the others also tensed up, their eyes fixed on the high platform. As long as the situation on the high platform was slightly off, they would definitely take action immediately. No matter what, they couldn't let anything happen to Baichen. Di Baichen was neither servile nor overbearing as he faced the 7 people from the upper realm, who were of extremely high status. The corners of his lips even curled up slightly. He raised his eyebrows slightly, but his eyes, which were as deep as a lake, were unfathomable. What do the presidents think? Luo Qinghao slowly narrowed his eyes as he looked at Di Baichen's unmoved appearance. This was not the first time he had seen Di Baichen. He had seen Di Baichen at the succession ceremony of the Holy Maiden of Light. Although this young man was the young master of the Di family, he felt that if this young man did not have this identity, he would not be worthy of the Saint of Light. However, now that he was really looking at Di Baichen, he realized that he was also a young man who could not be underestimated. At the very least, his mental fortitude was incomparable to that of an ordinary person. It's impossible for the Dark Sacred Assembly to be established. Feng Youxian's face was ashen. Her indifferent face was alienated, but her cold voice was filled with an undeniable meaning. As the guild leader of the water faction, Feng Youxian was extremely strong and had a noble status. However, she had never liked anyone. She was already famous for being as cold as ice. At this moment, her words were filled with a coldness that pushed people thousands of miles away. Chapter 6101. Why? Di Baichen spoke unhurriedly. His devilishly handsome face did not show any anger because of the 7 presidents' plans. On the contrary, it was as calm as a spring breeze. His calm appearance made it seem as if he was discussing the weather today and gently asking for everyone's opinion. Such a reaction was clearly beyond the expectations of Feng Yuxian and the others. Compared to their aggressive attitude, Di Beichen's attitude made them speechless. It was as if you went to kill someone, but the person poured you a cup of tea and enthusiastically asked you what you were doing here today. Could you say it out loud? What do you mean why? Luo Qinghao's expression was somewhat unnatural. This Di Beichen really did not play by the rules. It made him feel like he had used the wrong strength and was very uncomfortable. In short, it's not allowed to be established. A few days ago, I wanted to invite several presidents to discuss this matter, but it seemed that you were not willing to give me any pointers. Since you are here today, I also want to know why there are only 7 major guilds even though there are 8 attributes. Why can't dark attribute cultivators have their own guilds? What did we do wrong to deserve such a punishment? The magnetic voice was filled with warmth and gentleness. It was clearly a question, but because the voice was so pleasant to the ears, no one felt that it was aggressive. On the contrary, this question after question made everyone unable to help but think about the answer. Feng Yuxian and the others did not expect such a situation to occur. These questions made it difficult for them to answer. Dark attribute cultivators are too dangerous. The catastrophe back then almost destroyed the entire upper realm, so from then on, the upper realm stopped the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Lu Hongwei's voice rang out. His wise eyes looked straight at Di Beichen. He had always known that the latter was a smart child. Today's reaction was indeed eye-catching. It did not cause the conflict to erupt immediately. Instead, it eased it a little. However, no matter what, today's result could not be changed. That kind of thing happened back then only proved that some dark attribute cultivators had bad intentions. It does not mean that everyone is like that. Presidents, look at the young people behind me. They are all dark attribute cultivators. All these years they have endured things that they did not need to endure at all. They have always struggled to survive under everyone's supercilious eyes and ridicule. Some were clearly favored by the heavens, but they were forced to leave their families because of such gazes. Some had happy families, but they left heartbroken because they did not want to implicate their families. Those who were able to appear here were already lucky, because many dark attribute cultivators lost their lives because of discrimination and oppression, or chose to commit suicide because they could not bear such gazes. Why are they being punished for something that happened hundreds of years ago? Don't tell me, they don't even have the chance to raise their heads as human beings? They can't even find a place to rest under the sun? It was as if he was lamenting the unfairness of the world, of course, of the deceased. They were never unpardonable evildoers. They just wanted to work hard to live. Chapter 6102. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen and couldn't help but clench her hands. Her heart was also touched by this and she felt an indescribable heartache. These days, because more and more darkness attribute cultivators had gathered here, they began to understand their situation more and more. It was because they understood that they felt even more heartache. Compared to them, the people who followed Huang Futing were already living a good life. Because they lived in groups, even if someone wanted to bully them, they would have to think twice. Some cultivators who were left alone lived like a joke. That kind of miserable situation was not something you could imagine. This situation made them even more determined. They had to do everything they could to change everything. Not only for He Xinjuan's last wish, but also to follow their hearts. This was something they wanted to do from the bottom of their hearts. Di Beichen's words were the thoughts of all the darkness attribute cultivators. The painful experiences of these years flashed through their minds. That kind of pain was not something that people of the other attributes could understand. They had suffered too many years of discrimination. They would be woken up in the middle of the night. Many people had never had a good night's sleep. The feeling of waking up in the middle of the night covered in cold sweat was really uncomfortable. Di Yujua's eyes shined brightly. This kind of Di Beichen was a rare treasure in their eyes. Perhaps in the eyes of others, doing such a thing was simply a thankless task, but this kind of pure heart was extremely precious to them. They were proud of Di Beichen. Ouyang Jifeng's hands couldn't help but tremble. If everyone saw this scene, they would be very happy. As the younger brother, he would do his best to facilitate this so that his big brother would not fall into darkness forever. Almost everyone who disagreed with this matter felt as if a huge stone had been placed on their hearts after hearing this. Emotions were contagious, especially when Di Beichen's words were so exaggerated. Thinking of the situation of the darkness attribute cultivators in these years, everyone felt very miserable. Thinking about it carefully, this was just the result of the situation. It had nothing to do with these young people. Actually, I really agree with Beichen's approach. These people really don't have it easy. It's time to change this situation. Jiang Wenyan's expression was solemn. He had never expressed his stance, but in reality, his heart was already on the dark sacred assembly's side. Many things continued not because they were right, but because no one could break the deadlock. As long as someone could break this stalemate, then there was still a chance for everything to turn around. These 2 days I've been listening to them talk about their situation. It's really sad. Murong Jing nodded. In the past, he had never paid much attention to these things. It was only after carefully understanding the situation that he realized how sad it was. The guild leader, who had originally intended to reject D. Beichen, hesitated for a moment. Everything D. Beichen said was reasonable, and they had no way to refute him. It was not that they were unaware of such a situation, but for the sake of the stability of the upper realm, they could only sacrifice a portion of their benefits. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, those without strength could only be slaughtered. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.